Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, all praise and thanks belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we send peace and blessings upon the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his family, his companions, and all those who follow him until the Day of Judgment. Alhamdulillah, we're here today for a, inshallah, very insightful event. And we ask everyone to, inshallah ta'ala, participate, be with us, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. But most importantly, hopefully this is a way of benefiting all of us, inshallah ta'ala. We do have babysitting in room 114, so if you do have younger kids who are making a lot of noise, we do ask, inshallah, you take them there and kind of give them a break, take them for a walk, just so that everyone else can, inshallah ta'ala, benefit. I'm going to go ahead and start off with Quranic Meditation with Hafiz Rayan, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبارك الذي جعل في السماء بروجا وجعل فيها سراجا وقمرا منيرا وهو الذي جعل الليل والنهار خلفة لمن أراد أن يذكر أو أراد شكورا وعباد الرحمن الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما والذين يبيتون لربهم سجدا وقياما والذين يقولون ربنا اصرف عنا عذاب جهنم إن عذابها كان غراما إنها ساءت مستقرا ومقاما والذين إذا أنفقوا لم يسرفوا ولم يقتروا وكان بين ذلك قواما والذين لا يدعون مع الله إلها آخر ولا يقتلون النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق ولا يزنون ومن يفعل ذلك يلقى أثاما يضاعف له العذاب يوم القيامة ويخلد فيه مهانا إلا من تاب وآمن وعمل عملا صالحا فأولئك يبدل الله سيئاتهم حسنات وكان الله غفورا رحيما ومن تاب وعمل صالحا فإنه يتوب إلى الله متابا والذين لا يشهدون الزور وإذا مروا باللغو مروا كراما والذين إذا ذكروا بآيات ربهم لم يخروا عليها صما وعميانا والذين يقولون ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما أولئك يجزون الغرفة بما صبروا ويلقون فيها تحية وسلاما خالدين فيها حسنت مستقرا ومقاما قل ما يعبأ بكم ربي لولا دعاؤكم فقد كذبتم فسوف يكون لزاما صدق الله العظيم.
MashaAllah. Takbir.
Allah.
Jazakumullah khairan, hafizah. Inshallah, we're going to go ahead and get started with our first speaker for tonight. We have Sister Fatima from Olive Branch. Olive Branch has been working with BHA since the beginning, alhamdulillah, and we've had their support in many different occasions. And alhamdulillah, she's here today to enlighten us. So the way that today's program will go is that we'll give each speaker about 10 to 12 minutes to speak, just about some thoughts. And then we kind of want to open it up to the floor, inshallah ta'ala, to have a discussion within those who are here, bi'idhnillah. So I'm going to go ahead and let Sister Fatima get started.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for inviting me today. As Brother Hamza said, we have been working with, Olive Branch has been working with BHA since our beginning, and we've been able to be on campus to offer counseling services and then also over Zoom through COVID. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker and one of the founding members of Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. We offer social services and mental health counseling. I'm also on the board and past president of DAYA, which is an agency that supports families affected by domestic violence and sexual assault in the South Asian community. I know that there are a lot of thoughts that are going through our mind since this tragedy that hit our community over the past week. I've had the privilege of working with very closely with the staff and the sisters that worked with Sister Sadia, as well as the kids at Peace Academy. And there has been a lot of different feelings and thoughts that have kind of resonated through the time that I've spent there. And I think that it's just such a traumatic event that our community has faced. I think that I wouldn't be doing justice if I were not to talk a little bit about domestic violence this evening. And then we can definitely move into the coping strategies with Brother Khalid's expertise and the Islamic perspective and so forth. So I'd love to just talk a little bit about domestic violence and take this opportunity to kind of spread some awareness. I think that these are stigmas in our community, mental health and domestic violence. We need to work on eliminating those stigmas. And we're just scratching the surface with this through Olive Branch. There's a lot of work ahead of us. So inshallah, I just want to talk a little bit about what is domestic violence. What is DV? So that's also known as domestic abuse or intimate partner violence, and it can be basically it's a pattern of behavior in any relationship that is used to gain or maintain control over the intimate partner. So that can go either way, but just to give you some statistics, to give you an idea of what we're dealing with, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 10 men around the world are affected by domestic violence. That's about 1 billion women and over 38 million men. And 55% of women murdered in America were killed by intimate partner violence. So that's a very significant number, and it's something to think about. Now, we again have, everybody thinks of abuse as physical abuse, but it doesn't have to be just physical abuse. There's so many different types of abuse. There's sexual abuse, there's just gaslighting, minimizing, using the children against you, isolating you, exercising male privilege and dominance. Immigration abuse, there can be in-laws abuse, economic and financial abuse, just creating situations where the partner is isolated from their support. And of course, threats. And threats, again, if you leave me or if you try to leave me, I'm going to kill you. So these are all different types of abuse that can basically present in any shape or form as listed. And therefore, I think it's important for us to kind of keep an eye out and just among our friends, our community members, to see how are our sisters or brothers? Is anybody going through any of these things? And how can I help? I just want to talk briefly about the cycle of violence. Essentially, there's a cycle of violence where it starts with the tension building. And that's a lot of times there's going to be yelling and screaming and fighting. Then there's like an explosion phase in which there's outbursts, and then there's threats and attacks, like I mentioned, the threat that I mentioned earlier. Then it comes back to what's called honeymoon phase, and there's a lot of apologies and forgive me, excuses, perhaps even gifts that are given. And oftentimes the perpetrator exercises his control over the victim, and that victim believes them, and then just re-enters that cycle of violence and continues to live in violence or abuse in their relationship. So just briefly as to, these are the signs and how you can help as a community. We have existing organizations in the community, as I mentioned, DAIA, there's ANISA, there's other organizations that you can reach out to that are mainstream, HAWK, Houston Area Women's Center. Anybody from Fort Bend County has Fort Bend County Women's Center. I did bring some flyers here for DAIA as well as Olive Branch. And I think it's important for you to just check in on your sisters and brothers to see how they're doing and to see how you can support them. Now, it's important to know for you not to intervene yourself, because that can be poses dangerous to you and or even to the victim. So it's important for you to refer and get them the appropriate support that they may need. But just, first of all, just listen, just be there, and just be there for that person. You may be the only support, the only person that they are sharing their lives with or they're sharing their story with. So it's very important for you to be that support. And all of the sisters that I had the privilege of working with were Sister Sadia's family and support. So now, there's a lot of different feelings of grief. I'm going to kind of transition into grief. And essentially, we have several stages of grief, which you may have heard. Originally, you start off with denial and isolation. This can't be happening. What's happening? I can't believe that this happened. And then we move into another stage, which is anger and frustration. It can be directed at even the deceased or anyone and anything around your circle. And so just feeling angry at others or at yourself, and even at the deceased. How could they die? How could this happen to them? And then there's a stage of bargaining. Essentially, you're just thinking, if only I could have done this, or if only I would have done this. Perhaps, and I heard this a lot from friends and family. I wish I was there for her. I wish she spent the night with me. I wish I was available to her that morning. I wish we had bought her an alarm system or a Ring camera or something. So this is that bargaining phase that just, trying to kind of just process. Then we can kind of enter a stage of depression. And that, grief looks different for everyone. Every individual copes differently. And so it can be, for some, it's just transient. It's just a few days. It's something that you're able to process and move forward. For others, it can take a while. It can take a lengthy period of time. And so sometimes the depression hits in, and it can be ongoing. And for some, it can be ongoing depression and take a while for you to kind of process. And so then we kind of, some people are able to reach acceptance. And that would be, the fifth stage, in which you are trying to then accept what's had happened and learn to live with it. And it's difficult to get to that stage, and it takes a different amount of time for everyone. So I think it's important for you to know that if you are grieving, it's okay. Grief is something even in our deen that is very, very valid, and it's accepted. And there's a hadith that the Prophet visited Sa'd ibn Abdullah that during his illness, and he began to weep. And when his companions saw his tears, and they said, "Oh," and they also started crying. His companions started crying, and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "Do you not hear? Allah does not punish for the shedding of tears or the grief of heart, but punishes with no mercy for the utterance of this." And he pointed to his tongue. And the Prophet himself has been through so many losses in his life. beautiful wife Khadija, 6 out of 7 of his children in his lifetime, companions, and so forth, and he grieved. And that's okay, and that looks different for everybody. So it's important for us to know that there are, it's okay to be not okay, and it looks different for all. Health and coping skills, there's so many that I know that each of us, we have different coping skills, way to cope. Sometimes for some, it's just kind of getting back into a routine, getting back to work, going and carrying on with their daily lives. And for others, it's taking some time off, and stepping away and just processing and just being with loved ones. So it's really important to know to take care of yourself at this time. Give yourself that time. Give yourself, just listen to your body, listen to your mind. And try not to consume yourself with the news around you. I know it's been very challenging. There's a lot on the news, there's articles. And then, one of the things we countered with Peace Academy, how do we talk to the kids about this? And I think we can engage in that later as a discussion. But it's very important to kind of limit that obsession with the news, what happened, how it happened, and to try to kind of limit that. Make sure you're taking care of yourself and getting good sleep. Getting good sleep and eating healthy, allowing yourself to, probably prevent yourself from making any major decisions at a time where you're grieving. So they're not emotional decisions. It's important to just kind of take your time and just process what's happening. And just understanding that there will be change and with whatever has happened. This was a very traumatic event. I know when I was there with the sisters, there was, they were actually under lockdown for a little bit because the shooter had threatened a school where she worked at even prior. So there was some construction happening when we were in the room with the sisters, and there was a loud noise, and everybody just flinched and jumped. That's very normal response to that, to traumatic events. And I think that it's going to take time. It's going to take time for all the community to heal. It's going to take time for all Sister Sadia's loved ones, everyone that's close to her co-workers who actually were her family. And essentially, I think the frustrating part for many is that she did cry for help. She did get support from the community, or she reached out to organizations. She did reach out to, try to attempt to get support from different facilities, and unfortunately this still was the outcome. And so I think it's important for us to know that we need to pay attention and pay close attention. And yes, advocacy is going to continue moving forward, trying to see how we can get those restraining orders in place, trying to get those protective orders, but at the same time just being there for each other, being there for our neighbors, being there for our sisters. It's very important. And I think I'm going to pass this on to Brother Khalid, and toward the end we can engage in a discussion for any questions or anything that you all have.
Jazakumullah khairan, Sister Fatima. Just wanted to add, before I pass it on to Sheikh Mamdouh, is coping with tragedy. This was just ironically that everything happened back to back. And I think this is just like a starting conversation. But there are other types of tragic events that happen in people's lives, from losing loved ones to losing jobs to whatever the case may be, to finding out someone is sick. And we're hoping that inshallah this conversation helps us get through to many different avenues bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So with that being said, alhamdulillah, we're honored today to have Sheikh Mamdouh, who is the Imam at Champions Masjid Salam. So inshallah, I'm going to go ahead and have him say a few words, and then Imam Khalid, and then we'll go ahead and start the open conversation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ala. Praises be to Allah. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. First of all, my condolences to the community. This is a time of solidarity and togetherness. This is one of the tests of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to all of us. There are a few things I want to mention that will try my best to put things in perspective for us. Life and death is phenomenal that Allah Azza wa Jalla created for us so we can excel and bring the best out of us. The worst can come, but the whole idea is to bring the best out of us. لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. أحسن, not to bring the good, no, to see who's better. So we are all in a constant effort to bring the best that we have. Of course, to bring the best that you have in a time of calamity is hard. To bring actually something good is hard, let alone bringing the best that you have. Especially when the calamity is at your house, it's at your own place. It's at the masjid that you work with, for example, in my case here, in the school, the person that who suffered or who died, that you are in close contact with, or you are handling their issue, or you are counseling them. It makes it very hard, right? And yet Allah Azza wa Jalla says, لِيَبْلُوكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. So it's a challenge to yourself. And this is one actually of the coping mechanism when you when you read the literature about coping, the scientific literature, the psychology and all that, they tell you there is different coping mechanism. There is social coping, that you have to deal with people, that you have to even do some humor, you have to engage in some social activities, you have to talk to others and seek support and all of that. And there is some internal process also, in terms of religion, to dua and all of this. And subhanAllah, all in Islam. So if we basically apply what Quran tells us, and we read the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what he did and what Sahaba did in similar situations, yeah, there were similar situations. There are actually worse situations that are worse than that. Then you understand. And then when you read, Allah blessed us with science, with the scholars, with professionals, with mental health professionals and all of that, then things start making sense. They do make sense. They're not separate from each other. SubhanAllah, it's amazing, because we are now in a time that you have to put things in a perspective. You have to make points, you have to write articles, you have to make it, to make questionnaires, surveys, you have to scale things, and so on. So that's what Islam encourages us to do. It's like, so you do not just go and say, go make dua, or, inshallah, things will become better. Of course, inshallah, things will become better. Of course, we're going to make dua. But give me some steps to work with. Tell me as a community what we should do, as an organization what we should do, as an imam what should I do, as a counselor what should I do, as a person what should I do, as a husband, as a wife, as a father, as a mother, as a friend, what should I do? Give me some steps. And this is what actually I'm inviting people, and I'm talking to leadership of organizations, and I'm talking to fellow imams. That's what you need to come up with, and that's why I tell people everything at this time needed. Everybody's effort is needed. I'd love that someone comes with a, professional come with a study, like, studying a project. Like we want a family resource center, and I was telling people that this is the idea now. Every Islamic center, every masjid, every school should have a family resource center. Start with whatever I need as a member of a family. I need to have the resources. I need to ask and say, this is what I have. Then somebody will tell me, this is what you need, right there. This is the list of professionals. This is the literature you need to read. This is a course you can take. This is the imam you can go to. Those are the set of lectures. Those are the speakers who speak about it, like that. So we need to take these steps. Also, I want to mention that when we say coping with something, it is the rules or the thoughts and the behaviors, that will help a person get through some hard time or some stress. So you have to organize Everybody has thoughts. Whenever a calamity hits like this tragedy, everybody has thoughts in their head. And everybody have actions. Everybody act in a certain way. But when we say coping mechanism or coping strategies or coping styles, you will see, some say 4, some say 5, some say 10, some say this and that. And Sister Fatima, of course, know better in this arena. But at the end of the day, it is the way to organize your thoughts. It is the way that tells you what to think and what not to think, what to do and what not to do. Does this happen in the Quran? Yes. Does this happen in the Sunnah? Yes. There is proactive coping and there is reactive coping. Both are needed. Sometimes, they're both needed. Sometimes one performs better than other in certain situations. But proactive is like, ahead of time. You're ready for things. And reactive is like when it happens, that's how I want to react. There's negative reaction, positive reaction. Look at the incident of the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for example. Sahaba acted differently, right? So the thought process, they knew that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would die. Allah Azza said in the Quran, "Innaka mayyit wa innahum mayyitun." You are going to die. Allah told them, you are going to die. So in the back of their heads, all the Sahaba know that there will be a time that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would die, including Umar ibn Khattab. Correct? So that was given. Everybody dies. And Allah Azza is saying also in the Quran that Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a messenger, like all messengers before. If he dies or be killed, would you go back again to your jahiliyyah and your kufr? And whoever does that is a loser. So Allah Azza will reward those who are grateful and thankful. So they know that this is going to happen, and they know that they should hold their emotions. Yet, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam died, it was a shock to everybody. And even Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab took his sword and he said, whoever says that he died, I'm going to kill him. Just like in the spur of the moment. And then, subhanAllah, Sayyidina Abu Bakr comes, and you go there, and any counselor or any therapist will tell you that all the steps that they do, they were followed to the T. That is an emotion. And then, Sayyidina Abu Bakr told them, listen, calm down. And then he recited the verse for him, so he calmed down. He said, it's like exactly I hear it for the first time. He knows it, but he needs a reminder. He needs support. And that's where we come. All of us cannot resist the same way. So that somebody strong has to be when somebody is weak. But the two have to be together. This is why the community have to be together at all times. And then he addressed everybody else. He said, whoever worship Muhammad, he died. And whoever worship Allah, Allah will never die. And that's finding a meaning in this situation. And that's when coping, you have to find a meaning. Find a meaning in this calamity. What does it mean to us? All of us sitting here today, do we have a doubt that we will lose members of this community somehow, sometime in the future? You shouldn't have a doubt. We just don't know how and when. All of you should be sure that I'll die one day. But does anybody know? I'll die in an accident, or I'll die as a result of shooting, or I'll die just normally. And people say die peacefully. What is peacefully? Exactly. People die, just die, they die. Yes, it is hard. I'm not making light of the situation. It is traumatic, it is a tragedy. But all of us will go through this. But nobody knows when and how and where. Right? But we have to be there for each other when that happens. We try to be preventive, we try to take the means. So that situation showed us the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As the sister mentioned, Rasulullah buried his own children, but then he grieved. Then he still handled his prophethood duties, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best way possible. And he will joke with someone, he will smile with someone while he's grieving. It's okay to cry. It's okay. It's okay to vent those emotions. It's all right. Nobody say that you do not cry. Oh, you are a man, you have to hold. No, you cry. I cried. You cried. Ask yourself, when was the last time that you cried? If it was far, that means you have an issue. You should cry sometimes. And when things happen like that, this is a way. This is a coping mechanism. You cry. You are sad. If you bottle these emotions, actually it can implode or explode, and it causes another problem for someone else. So talk to people, talk to professionals, do all of that. One of my sheikhs, I just don't want to talk too much. One of my sheikhs told me something very nice and very important about qadr. Qadr is destiny. Sometimes people use this one here in a way which is very negative, in a passive way. It's a qadr of Allah. It's happened like that. You do not have any thing. Just don't stress it too much. It's qadr. Let it go. And some people on the other extreme, they're going to say, why this happened? How this happened? We should have prevented it. Should have, could have, would have. The bargaining state of the 5 stages of grief and all that. But the both are wrong. You always look at things happening to you from 2 angles. Before they happen and after they happen. Right? Before they happen, after they happen. Before they happen, you try your best to prevent the things that you do not like and get the things that you like. We try our best. We all wake up in the morning, do our best, go to work, expect the best, pray for the best, right? And try to be secure, have our cameras, have our security guards, have everything. We did our best. So try to excel in that. But believe that whatever Allah wills is going to happen. But you do your best and hoping that bad things don't happen. Is that clear so far? So this is what we do. And it never ever say the qadr of Allah, why should I do it? Qadr of Allah is going to happen regardless what I do. If a thief comes, he will come regardless of security camera. So Allah put security cameras. No. Put security cameras, believing that whatever Allah wants will happen, and praying that it does not happen. Is that clear so far? All right. So what if bad things happen after all of that? Again, do not lose your faith and do not say, regardless of what I did, it still happened, so what is the point? Wrong again. That's why you have to read it within that context. You have to say, subhanallah, this is the way Allah Azza wa Jalla intended. That means I still take the means and let me learn from this, how can I become better next time? How I make sure that this does not happen again. It may happen again. Bad things will happen again. But at least we did our best, learning from an incident, right? For that not to happen again. If it did not happen again, we did some extra stuff. You understand? So actually we are getting better at this. We are getting better in taking the means. We are getting better getting closer to Allah. We are getting better depending on Allah. We are getting better in knowing that we're still weak. We're still faqir to Allah Azza wa Jalla. Whatever we do, still Allah will do whatever He wants. Yet we will do the means and they will take whatever Allah gives us. We will learn, we will study, we will read, we will have circles, we will have more. Let this incident of Sister Saadiyya, and subhanAllah, I made a dua, to her and to her family, and to her daughter, to her mother, that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this tragedy of theirs a reason and the beginning for us to become more educated, more aware, more together, stronger as a community, as a jama'ah, caring about each other, allocating funds in the right way. And you know me, I do not hold back in speaking. Our organization has to prioritize allocating funds. When somebody comes to us, we have to take it seriously. We do not say, okay, we cannot help you anymore. No, best lawyers has to be there. Best therapist has to be there. And we have to take that case as the case of all humanity. Do not take it as, okay, I have 5, 6 divorce cases, let me prioritize one and leave the other. So each one of them is very important. You understand? So this is how we should deal with these things, starting from now. That's why I said there have to be a family resource center. It has to have funds. It has to have waqf for it. And when someone comes for domestic abuse or something like, take it seriously like your own. To the end. See it through. It does not matter how much you spend on it. See it through. Because once an example succeeds, then it becomes a precedent for everything after that. A precedent of negligence or a precedent for solution. And that's what we do. Instead, people would lose faith. in the organizations, in the leadership, in everything. And trust me, this mental health issue is a serious deal in the United States and all over the world. It is happening. I just heard yesterday about a similar case that's happened in Egypt. Yesterday. You know, a guy who simply murdered his 4 children and wife. Same exact thing happened. But he did not kill himself. And then he comes and says, yeah, when my time comes, I will also die. But things like that, mental health is there, mental problems are there, stressors are there. So my brothers and sisters, I give our esteemed guest a chance to talk to us about this from his perspective and from his experience, that it is time to act, inshallah. I promise you, as a sheikh and as a leader of the community, I'll be always there, and this is one of my priorities from now on. Alhamdulillah, my PhD was about the divorce and its impact on the family, Muslim minorities in the United States. So that was the whole idea. And I studied these things thoroughly. And it is serious, and it is real, and it's scary. The stress on us all. We do not know who's the next person who's going to have something beyond what they can take. So inshallah, I promise you I'll be there. We will do things for the community. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us all safe, keep our children safe, keep our spouses safe. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill our hearts with unity and love toward each other. May Allah protect our leadership. May Allah protect our educators, our sisters. May Allah give rahmah and maghfirah and jannah al-firdaus to Sister Saadiya, her daughter, and her mother. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khair. Pass it to Salah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We thank Him, we praise Him, we glorify Him. Beseech Him to send His choicest salutations upon His most beloved sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, and upon all those who choose to tread His path until the last day. I work at New York University full-time. I'm the university's chaplain there. I am also the director of NYU's Islamic Center, where we have 3,000 Muslim students, many others who live and work in the area, members of our community, people like yourselves. Altogether, we serve about 10,000 people, alhamdulillah. And through the community, we've been blessed to do a lot of other work, set up other agencies, most recently a domestic violence agency that's opened up a shelter, provides services in various capacities to survivors of abuse. As we go into discussions and conversations, we can talk about some of these things in specific. The crux of the work that I do is at the university. And about 13 months ago, I got the very difficult news that one of my students, who's a first-year student at our university, a young sister by the name of Farbin Tawheed, who's here from your state of Texas, in Dallas. In early April of 2021, her 2 brothers had made a decision to kill their whole family and take Farbin, her parents, her grandmother's lives, before they took their own lives. May Allah grant them peace and entrance into Jannah without any judgment. Many of Farbin's family lived in New York City. Uncles, cousins, her classmates were people that I knew very well, her professors. They were all trying to make sense of what was going on. One of the most difficult things, to make sense of a senseless act. We made dua, we tried as best as we could in a pandemic to engage people with the realities of so much illness and death happening around us as a result of COVID. And one of the gatherings that we had after we did a larger dua online was a smaller processing space, a healing space, for anybody who wanted to just come and talk, to share what they were carrying. The first young woman who spoke, a student, 18 years old probably, also a first year at our university, a friend of our sister Farbin, Allah yarhamha. She said that this is the 5th person that I know who has died from suicide. And then she caught herself and she said, actually, Farbin didn't die from suicide, she died from homicide. She's the first person that I know who died in that way. And inside I'm thinking to myself, man, this girl's 18. And she knows 4 people who left this world through self-inflicted harm. And is now sitting trying to make sense of a classmates of hers being taken from this world in such a grotesque way. How does one really answer anything in a moment like that? Dr. Wadiwala called me over the weekend and he said that this has happened in our community, and I had read about it already. And he said, can you come down and can you just be with our community to talk and to listen? And I tried every which way to make things work, not out of a sense of obligation or responsibility or things like that, but just out of love. Not because I know what it's like to lose a student of my own in this way, but what it's like to have to be in a place where you are a leader who he might not say this to you, and I don't even know, we haven't even talked about it, but there's no way that he hasn't stopped moving since last week. And I can guarantee to you, and you can ask yourself, you alone in this room individually included, how many people do you think have asked him, do you need anything? How are you doing? When we're in a space and we're trying to make sense of it, you try to think about now, though, how many conversations have happened? Where we try to intellectualize and explain things that we have no real basis of saying most of what we say. Our sister talks about domestic violence. She indicates that the deceased was looking for help. Guaranteed, there are people who, in response, would try to say, she must not have tried hard enough. To engage in rhetoric on something that should not be rhetorical. Innocent lives were taken in a way that if you're not shocked by it, there's probably something wrong. And if you can't take a moment to just sit and pause, to breathe and reflect, it's not going to create healing, but it's going to do everything other than that. If somebody is struggling sitting next to you and your struggle is not the same, that's okay, you're not the same person. We shouldn't have to utilize religious texts to be able to validate and justify people's pain in moments where it is sensible in the aftermath of senseless violence to feel pain. So yes, our Prophet ﷺ, he cried and shed tears. He stayed up into the late hours of the night with his blessed feet swelling, seeking maghfirah for all people, generations well beyond him. He understood difficulty in his life when Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha asks him that, was there a day harder for you than Uhud? A day in which we lost. His blessed face gets pierced. Blood drips from it. He jumps to catch it in his hands before it strikes the ground. And when they say, what are you doing? He says that those people, the ones who injured him in the first place, they wouldn't be able to handle what would happen to them if this blood hit that earth. Numerous companions of his were lost in that battle. All kinds of things rendered impact in every which way. And she asks him after, was there a day that was harder than that? And he said, yes, Taif was more difficult than Uhud. He didn't say we don't complain. He didn't say that life is not tough. He had a hardship. He went through challenge. There's a lot of people in your community, that's what they're feeling right now. I've sat in this room with 3 different gatherings in the course of this day so far. And from some of those gatherings, I've had people who have already reached out, saying just how hard it is. Not because there's not people who are unwilling to talk. There's a lot of people who want to talk. They're saying nobody wants to listen. Nobody wants to really be in a place where they're just willing to take some of what it is that I'm carrying. This is not the time to explain or answer questions that we're not poised to answer. If somebody came to you and said, why did this happen? How can you possibly know in the broader sense of why? It's not the time to give people platitudes, a lack of substance, to say that this is an indication of your trust, your faith in the divine. It's the time to say, I don't know. I don't know why I went this way. And you saying I don't know doesn't undermine Allah in any capacity. But you yield to your role as a human, and you recognize that your answer, if you were to give it, is going to just justify passivity of how you walk with someone through their struggle. I've been in refugee camps all over the world. I've been in conflict zones. I've been in the aftermath of natural disaster. I've sat with people in this country and other parts of the world who've experienced traumas and losses. May Allah make things easy for them. You can't even imagine. I can't explain away their pain. That's not what my job is supposed to be. In a community that claims to be of God, a masjid, a house of Allah, is meant to be a space that draws attentiveness not to the house, but to Allah. And as people come in and they're struggling, you want to think their individual interactions with you, how will they recognize as they leave from that not only does God exist in the midst of all of this, but that's a God of mercy, a God that is the source of love, al-wadud, the most gentle, al-latif, the source of peace, ya salam. After they've spoken to you about what it is that you think about this circumstance. I say it to you with love. You don't want your books to be written with commentary that you have no idea how you are hurting people, because you're saying things that you might not recognize. They're adding to the senselessness of things. It's a time when you proactively should be turning to the person sitting next to you, behind you. Are you okay? Do you need anything? It's a time when you should be thinking that there are children that were taught by this young woman who's got family that has no idea how to explain to their babies what happened to their teacher. There are people who prayed with these people. There are people who led them in prayer. I've seen all kinds of things I can't even explain to you. And in the 18 years I've been blessed to serve my community, I can't tell you of a harder thing than me seeing one of my students die. And I'm blessed to have a community that checks in on its leadership. And that we can teach to check in on each other. A lot of my job is to just sit and listen to people. To move away from the black and white that's just about externals. These are not fiqh questions. These are not Aqidah questions. Somebody's trying to just deal with the struggles of life. They want to let things out. Your heart has capacity to it, just like any vessel does. And if it gets filled with so much, in order for you to put something in, you got to be able to let something out. And sometimes what you need in order to let something out is somebody that's on the other end of it that says, I'm going to hold some of it with you. And that's why it's important in this gathering that it's not a front-facing lecture. But we take time to hear from each other. What are we feeling right now? What is it that we're going through? I wish I knew each of you so intimately that I could tell you in detail and specific, this is what you as a fully autonomous, conscious human being can do on your own accord to cope specific to you. I'm sorry that I don't know all of you that well. But I could tell you that a lot of you are just holding words inside. You're holding your thoughts inside. And the beauty of having community is that you can now release some of that and have others hear what it is that's going on. And when you're on the receiving end of it, you embrace it in the prophetic way of adopting our teacher, sallallahu alaihi wasallam's sense of emotional intelligence. That for this to work as a gathering, we need all of you to stay after we have prayed the Maghrib prayer, even if you don't have something to share, so you're here to listen to your brothers and sisters talk about what it is that they are carrying with them right now. Make that commitment that when we break for Salah and we come back, that there's as many people, if not more, that are going to be here, even if for no other reason, you're just going to hear what's happening. When people start to share, it's not the time to jump to correct or to say what you're saying is right or wrong. That's not what it's about. It's about to just let yourself be in a place where you don't have to even frame in questions, but you're letting out some of the heaviness. You're allowing for yourself to feel before solutions and do's and don'ts, and let's make this and do that. You're affirming and validating emotions. You're saying it's okay to be confused right now. It's okay to be afraid right now. It's okay to be worried right now. It's okay to be angry right now. And it doesn't always have to come the way society makes us say that, well, try this, do this. Sometimes it's not about doing anything. It's just about listening and saying to somebody, that must be so hard. I don't know what to do, but I'm here for you in whatever way you need me. I'm here for you to help you. This is why I got on a plane and left my house at 5 a.m. to come and be here with each of you. For no other reason other than I don't want you to carry it by yourself. I love my brother Hamza. I love the people that work here. I love many people in the city of Houston. When I read our tradition, this is what I believe our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam would do. Not to come to just lecture and talk at people, but to give them an opportunity to say, this is what I'm going through. So in a bit, we're going to ask you to let us hear what it is that's going on. And to create some guidelines for what that conversation would look like. Somebody says something, respect what it is that they're saying. Just listen. Not listen to respond, just listen to understand. Hear what it is that your fellow community members are carrying. A week ago was tough. Yesterday is hard. Allah make things easy for all of us. When you share and you speak, try your best to make I statements, as opposed to broader statements rooted in a we, that sometimes under assumption that it's inclusive is more exclusive than anything. That we are supposed to be strong. Well, what if I'm struggling? You just left me out. We're supposed to be in a place where our faith doesn't waver. It's not my faith. A little baby girl was just killed. 18 children were just massacred. Why would I not be in a place where my insides are hurting and I'm trying to figure out what it means? Do you get what I'm saying? So I make I statements. We want to hear from people, but if you know you talk a lot, try to be in a place where you create opportunities for others to speak. You want to share the mic. And what we talk about here, we want to maintain a certain sense of respect, a confidentiality that allows for someone to feel safe in sharing what they feel. It's not meant to be the subject matter of conversations thereafter, especially in a derogatory or condescending way. Can we all commit to this? Is that something that everyone is comfortable in committing to as we start to discuss and just hear where people are? Don't confine yourself to only speak because you feel like you're saying the quote-unquote most correct thing. And don't hesitate in sharing what you're feeling because you're worried that it's quote-unquote wrong. That's not what a space like this is about. But we want to be able to hear and understand. It doesn't have to be formulated in questions, if that's okay to say. Because there's not always going to be answers to some of it. We don't want to treat it as a discussion like that, but to let it be something that allows for us to start to open up to one another. And then we can really start to hear empathetically, like, what are people going through right now? And how does it then help me to understand my role as a part of the solution to all of it in the broader sense? Does that make sense? So I know we have microphones. People can feel free to share from their seats if you want to come up, whatever it is. And I think we have maybe about 15 minutes or so till Maghrib comes in, 10 minutes. So maybe we can start just before Maghrib comes in. If anybody wants to start us off, just where are you at right now? Where are your thoughts? What are you feeling? And that can be young people, old people, parents, single people, your children in the room, anything that you're kind of going through. And we can start it off, and then once the adhan is called, we can break, and then we'll come back. We have a mic if people want to use the mic, but you also don't have to if you're not comfortable with that. Who would like to start? Just to share with us, where are you at right now? What are you feeling right now? What are your thoughts? What are you carrying with yourself? Yeah, go ahead.
Here.
So the tragedy that we went through, I would start from what happened in Buffalo, New York. And we experienced this in our own community, and then in our own state, another tragedy. It's one tragedy after another. If we relate this to the community, I think there is a cultural stigma that when it comes to psychiatric evaluation of an individual, or if you are going through some psychiatric issues, it's like it's a hush-hush thing. You just shove it under the carpet and don't say anything. It's very embarrassing. It is real. I'm no doctor, but what I have discussed with doctors and a group of friends who are in medical field, it's a reality. A chemical imbalance in a human body, it's a reality. There is a treatment for that. But for every treatment, the first step is acceptance. If you are diagnosed with a illness, then the first step towards the treatment is an acceptance. But how do you bring that individual towards that step of acceptance? Even the strange husband of Sister Sadia, he was cut off. And when people get cut off, they become isolated. And when they become isolated, they do these type of things. So communication is the key. Bringing the psychiatric issues to light, to discuss with somebody, that is also very important. Now, how we can do that? One thing that I was thinking about it last night. Every masjid should start a 1-800 number, which would be confidential for sisters or for any brothers who are going through this. So they can feel free to call and discuss their issue. The other thing is collectively, it's a community failure, in my eyes. Had we stayed in touch more with the sister, what she was going through, or with that, he was a kalma go, he was, regardless of what he did, it was a heinous sin, but maybe not cutting off and keeping in touch and providing him medical help, you could have a different picture. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But we can't cry over the spilled milk. We just have to go towards the solutions. As I said, one solution is this small step. All the masjid, any brother or sister who's going through domestic problems, domestic violence, problems in their married life, problems with their children, problems with their job, problem with money, or we just have this 1-800 number. Feel free to call us. Feel free to discuss with us. So at least we open the door of communication and try to hear the problems, and then maybe we'll be able to find a solution collectively. Thank you so very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Maybe we can get one or two more people to just share, and as we're getting the mic to someone, you can raise your hand if you'd like. You want to have interdisciplinary movements in response to the building of things. And I think as we explore what are options and solutions in the long term, you have professionals who are dedicated, they have an understanding, and to recognize that the trajectory that you can build in creating well-established services require leaning on those who that's their training and skill sets to help build those out as best as possible. And I would say, just as a quick piece as well, when we're talking about domestic violence, it's not an issue that you both sides of the circumstance. There's no neutrality in some of these things. And domestic violence is about control. And it's quite antithetical to our tradition because Allah is going to say on the Day of Judgment, the Hadith says, that bring those who thought that they were Malik. Because Allah Azza wa Jal, we call upon Him as Al-Malik, 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 numerous times in the day. And you don't want to be in a space where, again, it might not be in our frame of expertise, but it's a modern phenomenon that seems to somehow be understood as something that elevates one in some way to say that there's two sides to certain circumstances. Some situations don't have two sides. And domestic violence is one of those situations. Abuse is one of those situations. In a matter like this, the priority is always the victim, the survivor, no matter what. And no qualms in being in a space where we recognize the perpetrator of the violence, if need be, needs to step away in every which way, and we protect the one that the violence is being perpetrated against, right? Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she says of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, لَمْ يَضْرِبْ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ إِمْرَأَةً وَلَا غُلَامًا وَلَا وَلَدًا قَطْ, that the Messenger of God did not strike a woman or a servant or a child ever. And he made a deliberate point in being able to tell to his community the reality of being able to side always with the one that was oppressed, not the oppressor in any capacity. This is what I'm saying. You don't want to intellectualize it. You don't want to get to a place where you start to explain things that it's not necessary to explain. In an abusive situation, you believe the one that's abused. No questions in any which way other than that. I know the adhan was just called, I think, or I heard someone's adhan clock go off, right? I don't know where the prayer is held and where things go. Do you want to direct me?
Inshallah. Inshallah, we're going to go ahead and pray in the masjid. So the sisters can walk from your front and your right, and then the elders can walk from there as well. Sisters can go from my left to your front. The masjid is open, and the brothers are going to walk around, inshallah ta'ala. And then after Maghrib, we're going to go ahead and meet back over here, inshallah ta'ala, and continue this conversation. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Right beside you.
Assalamu alaikum. We're going to get started again. People want to settle in. After Maghrib, mashallah, at least on the brother's side, there was a lot of brothers that came up to me and they're just talking. You know, this is what we're feeling, this is what we're seeing, this is what it's been like. Which is what we want everyone to kind of hear. Because likely if you are going through something or seeing something, there's somebody else who's also experiencing that as well. And at the very least, if you're able to share where they're not comfortable in kind of sharing their experiences, you're going to help them to, at a minimum, not feel as if they're the only ones going through what they're going through. So where you're comfortable and being able to kind of just express, what are you feeling right now? Right? I'm sure a lot of people are feeling very heavy. When I left this morning from New York City, my wife and I, we prayed Fajr together. I threw some stuff in a carry-on suitcase, took a quick shower, and when I came out, I could hear her, and she was crying very heavily in our bed. And I asked her if everything was okay, and I came and sat down next to her. I held her hand, and I put my other hand around her. And amidst her tears, she said, I just saw the faces of the children from the shooting in the school in Texas yesterday. And she's letting out just a lot of heaviness. She's letting out what it feels like for her, the frustration, the anger. And so I'm saying we don't want to be solution-oriented. We want to first just be able to affirm what we're feeling. And you can't affirm feelings if the feelings are not understood or expressed or let out in some capacity. You know what I mean? So the same way some of you were coming up after Maghrib saying that this is what it's been like, this is what we've seen, this is what I'm going through right now, this is so hard. That's what we want to kind of create as an opportunity and tend to build off of that in a conversation. As a coping mechanism, it's very important because you don't want to just hold it within. One, because then the people who are kind of defining the conversation, or they're trying to make decisions, they don't then get to hear what that's like, right? Most of us have perspectives on, for example, what it must have been like for this woman who was a survivor of domestic violence when we are not even women, let alone being a woman who is a survivor of domestic violence. The only way you're going to understand what that's like is to hear from the person who's going through it. And in our religious pedagogy, quite often the challenge comes that there's somebody who sits on this side of a microphone that tells those on the other side what they're supposed to think, what they're supposed to feel, what they're supposed to understand. This isn't a situation like that. It's different. We're not talking about abstract theology. We're not talking about legalistic frameworks. We're talking about the world got really heavy all of a sudden for many of us. We don't want you to carry it by yourselves, and we don't want anyone in the room to feel like they have to hold it on their own. So the same way after we had prayed Maghrib, many of you were in a place where you were sharing, this is what it's been like for me, this is what it's been like for kids that I know, this is what it's like for so-and-so or such and such. Or when we talked even briefly and I said, how are you doing? And you said, I'm not doing so well right now. If not in a house of God that you can be able to share something like that, where else are you going to do it? That person that's sitting across from you, who's the only Muslim in their office space, you think they're going to go tell somebody else over there? They're the only Muslim in their classroom, the only Muslim in their department, their hospital, their residency, the only person that looks like them, thinks like them, sees what they see or feels what they feel. That's where we lean on each other. Does that make sense? So who would like to kind of start us off as we resume again? Yeah, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. My name's Awais. I'm part of the community. I grew up at Eidul Masjid, and I came back, and I've mainly been living in the medical center. But my brother-in-law, have their children that go to HPA, and they have kids that were taught by this teacher. And the first thing I want to share is just share the feelings that I have right now. And it's a very difficult conversation when a child asks you, who knows what happened, why did a father do this to their child? It's very difficult when they say that, Khadija left this earth earlier than she should have. It's very tough to, see how they're going to cope with it. What should I tell them? What is too much? What is not enough? And I think that's the challenge my siblings have been facing. I've seen these children grow up, and it's very different seeing them not with light on their face. They're coming home, they don't want to talk, they just want to be hugged. This teacher wasn't just anyone. It was a teacher they admired, that they learned a lot from, who was very invested in their growth. So when a class of 7 sees that there's an empty chair now, when a class of 7 comes and their homeroom teacher is missing, and they know that she's, at the minimum, she's dead, at the most, she's been murdered, I think that is a very tough pill to swallow. So I first wanted to share that because I know there's a lot of people in this community who have children of their own, and the first thing that happens when these types of crimes are committed, you think about your own. I think about my son, I think about my daughter, who aren't at the school age yet. And the very difficult thought I get is this man was willing to not just kill them, but kill himself. What if he came to the masjid and did this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected us from this. He gave us an opportunity to reflect on this and to think, what can we do? And alhamdulillah, I'm very happy with all the conversations that we're having here. These are the tough conversations. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His infinite mercy has given us that opportunity, that we did not lose more. And we just had an example of when, just yesterday, how many children can be taken away in an instant. That's the first thing I wanted to share. The second thing I wanted to share is that, in my line of work, we talk about diversity, we talk about inclusion. And we talk about this because patients who come to physicians, they want to see someone who looks like them on the other side. If I'm treating a Muslim, for them it's much easier. They'll tell me everything because I'm a Muslim. It's easy for them to say, hey, can you make sure you get a halal, diet for me? Because no one else knows what that is. Or they'll say things like, well, I want to make sure you don't give me products that have pork in them and stuff, in the IV infusion. These are things they can share with me. They feel comfort in it. I think in our community, a lot of times, children, women especially, may feel, that there may not be as much of a voice that's being heard from their end. There's not as much representation that they're seeing on the other side. Like alhamdulillah, we have a sister here to represent for them, but I think it's very useful to have it because it's very, very easy for a Muslim man in our community to be heard. If he comes, if he says something, we believe him, we trust him. But if a woman comes, I'm not making a blanket statement, but majority of the time when a woman comes, she has to come with evidence upon evidence upon evidence to get and rally that kind of support. So I think this conversation is great, and I think we're moving in the right direction, but I want to emphasize that the women and children of our community are a part of our community. The children are our future, and their voices are and will continue to be heard. Jazakallah khair.
So just as we're moving on to the next person, Jazakallah khair, thank you, Awais, for sharing. I just want you to take a pause for a moment and then just see what's rising for you in your own thoughts. If in your head right now you're thinking about every single thing that you can say to respond to what the brother just said, about, well, maybe we need to do this, or maybe we should do that, or this is why that's not right, or that's why that's wrong,
all you gotta do is just be still and to understand that his experience is a valid experience. And that what he's saying is something that actually transpires. You don't have to explain it away. You don't have to negate it. You just have to understand that he's opening up and he's sharing. He prayed with you. He will continue to pray with you. There are many others who are going through something similar. The exercise is about sharing, but also listening. And just listening to understand. To not jump to be able to explain why it doesn't make any sense, or why we have to now go and do all of these other things. Just sit with it with stillness so that he knows you're holding some of it. Do you get what I mean? And the things that pop up that agitate to say, well, he must not be thinking this, or he doesn't know this. Those are the voices you have to silence right now. You just have to be here with real love, with a real sense of presence so that you can understand fully. And then when it makes sense, we then move forward to steps about, well, what do we do next? Who else? What else can we think about? What are people carrying?
All right. Maybe you'll hear my experience for the first time. When I got the news 2 hours exactly after the shooting happened. And I was shopping for something in my house. I'm doing some project there, so I was in that store shopping for it. And then I got the call, and I take the call wherever I am. And I want you to imagine that when I'm listening to the call and I'm hearing one detail after the other, I'm jumping to conclusions already. So like your brother said, the Sheikh, where are you? I said, are you ready to listen to some bad news that happened to him? I said, yeah, sure. Then he said, Sister Sadia. I said, yes. He said, she is being murdered this morning. At that time, the first thing I felt in my knees, like my knees like shook, like I'm not able to stand. Actually, I leaned on the card that I had. And then he said, how did it happen? He said, her husband. So now in my head, that he just shot his wife, right? And he shot his daughter too. First thing comes to my mind, I said, please don't tell me that this happened at the school. My head, like I'm going like a head now, it's racing. Like I said, where did it happen? And I'm praying in my head, that fast that it's not like this Uvalde thing. Like it's my thinking now, like, okay, mother and daughter in the morning, that means they're at school. So that means it happened in the school. My kids at the school. And it is in the masjid. And it happened at that house. You see, I just want you to know this conflicting things, like the human aspect of things. I don't want to feel like I'm guilty because I'm thinking about my children, and at the same time I'm thinking about, sister in the community. So you feel like Alhamdulillah on one side, but you feel like La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah on the other side. And those things you do not share. I'm sharing for the first time now. I'm sharing these things. And there is and her mother too. And now you're listening, and things are like transpiring in a very bad way. It's like a nightmare. Like every time you listen, there's something worse coming. There's worse coming. And so what's going on now? Oh, there's an investigation on all of this. Then you race for, what are the details? I do not know the details. The first thing, I am, for the next 15, 20 minutes, I am going in the store not knowing what am I doing. And I don't know, what am I doing here? What am I buying? Because I had to call my son, and I tell him, I am in such place, so please come. So everything is all right. I told him, just come. I need help with that stuff. Then I told him, there's that list, and the people, workers are home, see what they want, and just get it. And then I go home, and first thing I sit with my children, which their school finished. and I have to talk to them, you know. But me at that time, I was kind of lost, you know, like, you know, lost. So it's kind of, what do I tell them? You know, I love my children. What do they think now when they hear the news? Do they hear it from me, or they can go and find it on their own? And if they find it in their own, what's going to happen? So, you know, all this thousands of ideas come in your head. Now, what is going to happen in the masjid? Do I go to the masjid now, or I don't go to the masjid now? What's going to happen tonight? You know, like what this janazah is going to look like, the funeral is going to look like, what are her friends in the school, how am I going to deal with the kids, how am I going to deal with the jama'ah? Do I cry in front of my jama'ah, or I don't cry in front of my jama'ah? You know, how should I hold myself? Do I go address the community in the Facebook, or I don't address the community in the Facebook? You see, this is what I was going through. And as Brother Khalid was mentioning, it is tough for a leader versus whom he talks to. Like now I know that everybody wants to talk to me, but whom am I going to talk to? So those of you listen to my first address to the community, I couldn't, you know, I was crying. I did not know. I was actually looking for someone who can listen to me and tell me everything is going to be all right, give me a hug or something like that. But that was not the case until now, you know. So I had anger. I was angry. I was unhappy, and I was scared. I'm honest with you, very scared for myself, for my children, for the community. When I enter the masjid, I'm looking for the security. I'm doing that. When I'm in my office, same thing. I'm not ashamed to say that. But I do not know who's in trouble in the community, who can do something not right. So I'm fearful for my children. I'm checking on them, you know. Now I want to do more cameras at my house and all this kind of things. So this is just I'm sharing with you the human experience. You know, so this is what I'm going through, and the good part is that you being there, like you sitting there right now in front of me, and the brother Khalid here and the sister and all that. That's what gives me comfort right now. I'm telling you, it's not like me the source of your comfort. Actually, it is reversed. It's the other way around. I'm going to the masjid more, right? I go to the masjid more. I want to see people. I want to see people like there. Okay, so because now it's very hard for me, like for sleeping, it's very hard for me for the past 3-4 days. Very, very hard. And I am just telling you now that I cannot sleep 1.5 hours or 2 hours, like every time I wake up, and I'm stressed and I'm like worried. And this is what's happening with your sheikh. So I just wanted to share that with you and tell you that if you are struggling with something like that, it's okay. It's normal. We'll talk about it and let it out, and inshallah we'll figure something.
Inshallah. You know, what's remarkable is in the midst of all of it, he's still doing the things that he does, right? And I just want you to think as he's telling you, making himself vulnerable, think about people in the masjid. If he's not leading Fajr tomorrow, they're going to get upset with him. If he decides he needs to take some time off, are they going to throw a fit? That's why you got to hear from each other so that they now don't have to speak for themselves. You can be the one that goes and says that you need to relax. You don't know what the brother's going through right now. He's trying his best. You get what I mean? Who else is wanting to share or give us some thoughts on just where we're feeling right now? Yeah, go ahead. And maybe if we have any sisters who want to share anything on this side. Yeah, so we'll do this.
So this is in conjunction to what we just spoken about, the reaction from Sheikh Mamdouh. So there have been conversations with my friends and I. We have certain intimate groups where, we're on WhatsApp or we're in person having conversations. And there's now two conflicting sides to how leadership should be approached. I'm literally in the sense of defending Sheikh Mustafa now. And there's literally friends that I've grown up with over 20 years. They're saying, who do we blame? As a Islamic community, there always is like, you gotta bat the eye and look the other way and then just keep on moving forward. Just like the school shootings, there's instead of you being proactive, we're just being reactive because there's no sense of preparedness for something like this. So in that sense, I'm having to defend the sheikh that I love. I've known them over 30 years, the Mamdouh family. Sheikh Mamdouh's father is the one who taught me the Quran since I was a baby, and things like this. I'm literally fighting my friends verbally and saying, we can't just blame the leadership. So they're looking at things like this, and obviously we covered the fact that Sister Sadia and her family was the most tragic way, and in 2022 there's going to be things that'll come up out of the blue, because we never know the future. So outside of the sheikh responding, if you guys can tell us how to be proactive moving forward and not, because half the community wants to blame somebody. I don't want to do that. I want to be proactive in a positive manner, but I don't know how to, even tell some of my best friends that, hey, we can't just point the finger, because that's not the best way for you to approach things like this. So I'm just looking for a response in that sense where, I'm just going back and forth because I'm trying to defend one of the people that I love for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they're trying to tell me, it's the sheikh's fault, it's the leadership's fault for not being prepared for something like this. So that's just what I wanted to share and, get in reaction from you guys where, how to be proactive, inshallah.
Assalamualaikum, brother. So I think a lot of people are asking that question, and I too have kind of been pondering myself as to how we can be more proactive for sure. I think first, it really needs to start with each and every person at home, and we need to have these conversations and dialogues at home in order to be preventative in the future for any of these tragic incidences. So I know that brother over there mentioned how this was a father that tragically killed his child, and there was a murder-suicide, there was a suicide. There's so many elements to this. There was guns involved, there was mental health, this was domestic violence. So many layers that need to be kind of addressed. So I think it's really important to have open dialogues with one another. I mean, it's okay to see each other's perspectives and agree to disagree, but have conversations. But it's important more than anything to see the other's perspective. I think oftentimes we kind of railroad over each other and just think that our perspective is the right perspective. But it's very important in order to kind of build a cohesive solution to this. I mean, of course, as a mental health professional, I'm thinking in my mind, how am I going to work on building a framework to implement some sort of crisis intervention within the actual community, because we legit were scrambling. Everybody was scrambling. And I mean, it's just a vicious, cycle in that we don't have, resources in order to implement this, but then on the other hand, the need is there. So it's really important, I think, for all of us to kind of reflect and know that we each are responsible for doing our part. And it starts at home for sure, these conversations. I think it's important to be very honest, even with our children, as to what happened, depending on their developmental age. Obviously, it's a different conversation with everybody, but it's important to have these discussions around what happened and be honest about it, and not and create, share your own narrative with your child. Therefore, you're the first person where they're hearing it, as opposed to getting it from elsewhere. And continue to work with the conversations you mentioned you're having with your friends and on WhatsApp groups. I think, again, we're all grieving, and so part of grief is anger, and it's a lot of pointing fingers, blame, trying to figure out how this could have been prevented. But truthfully, I think it's important to reflect and each of us do their part in understanding the other's perspective. I think it really begins there, and we tend not to do that often. So, let's try to work on that as a community and then approach leadership with solutions and thoughts and ideas rather than blame, and that's not effective. I hope this tragedy is a catalyst for positive change. I think there's so much room for that, and we really need to focus on what the gaps are. Where are the gaps? We need to, try to work on eliminating the stigmas associated with mental health, with domestic violence, and we need to understand there's a huge difference between marital discord and DV, and that's, I think, something that we can really overlook at times. When there's a huge control differential in a relationship, that and then abuse stems from that. There is, having an extra date night is not going to make that difference, or having, there is significant difference between the two, and we need to understand that and educate the community, spread awareness, invest in these organizations that are trying to provide the mental health support for each one of us, and again, see each other's perspective. That would be where to start, in my opinion.
The Shaykh who recited Quran in the beginning was reciting to us from Surah Al-Furqan, and he was giving depictions of the Ibad al-Rahman straight from the Quran, right? الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا, the verse says. And then when they're spoken to by the Jahilun, قَالُوا سَلَامًا, to give definition to words, right? Someone is jahil not because they have idiocy, but the intellect now gets muted. The aql is not what the vehicle is. And when you're in a motive state, you're going to do certain things. And so if we're going back and forth and somebody has this emotional angst within them, they're angry, they're frustrated, it's building all of these things, right? Gun control, issues around race, 10 black people get massacred by supremacists in Buffalo. Nobody says anything. School shooting takes place. That is not the first. It's, I think, the 28th that has taken place since the beginning of the year. Let alone how many other shootings take place throughout the course of things that we don't even hear about. You have all this pent-up stuff inside of you, and similar to what we're doing right now as an exercise, somebody says to you, I feel this and this, and the immediate response that they get is that you're wrong. Yeah, there's certain things that are wrong, but also when someone's expressing and they're letting out for the first time, they might not have the words to actually say what they're fully able to say, right? And emotional intelligence is a deep part of our tradition. It doesn't assume an absence of intelligence, but just think about the way you learn about feelings and emotions in the first place. You know what a table is. I don't have to illustrate it for you in a more kind of descriptive manner. A microphone, a chair, right? We know what these words mean. When I talk to you about a cell phone, I don't say, please hand me the cellular apparatus that's connected to a mobile network of millions of people around the world. I say, give me the phone, and you know what a phone is. When I say to you a word like grief, when I say to you a word like anger, when I say sadness, when I say abuse, do you know what it means the way you know what the word phone means? And so when the Quran says, right, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, we understand the meanings of things through the names of things. And if there's ambiguity in our socialization, the way somebody taught you 2 + 2 = 4, but nobody said to you, this is what a healthy relationship looks like. This is what healthy love looks like. No one sat down and taught us, these are what you kind of respond with when somebody's in a state of grief or anxiety. Now if somebody's saying to you, this is what I feel, and in response to it, they're shut down, it's not going to make them necessarily open up, but they're going to double down in whatever inward angst that they have, saying that
This guy doesn't necessarily get what it is that I'm talking about. They might not even know what they're saying. That doesn't mean it's a right or wrong situation. But if in a room of a couple of hundred people, undoubtedly there's some of you who understand by training, not by just living, but by training. How do people work? Human development, psychology, social workers, counselors, understanding, mental health, wellness, emotional well-being. Then you start to bring them in and they start to talk to you. You can pull so much from our tradition about it, but in recognizing that what's really going on in the aftermath of tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, when somebody is looking for accountability, you are a minority demographic that checkboxes numerous boxes of subgroups of minorities, it becomes hard. And then everybody has an answer to everything. And everybody has a way to be able to say why somebody else is not doing what they should do. You just double down on it. The accountability mechanisms, yeah, they're necessary. I don't know how anybody could be prepared for tragedies like this. It's not something that is just innate. Communally, yeah, we are responsible to fulfill fard kifaya. We serve the underserved and underprivileged. You built a beautiful school, you built a masjid. You don't need more masjids and prayer areas. It's not that it's a bad thing, that's great. Now build out the other social services. Nobody's gonna build for you what you have to build for yourself. And if you don't empower creativity, you don't empower imagination, you don't take your wealth and put it into what needs to be built in ways that other communities have built it, and understand the realities more broadly, that you live in a society rooted in anti-Blackness, overrun by patriarchy, seeks to satisfy an unsatiable capitalistic greed that teaches you your happiness is rooted in buying what they're telling you and selling to you, and gets you to believe that acting upon your faith and your identity somehow has to be limited, then you're going to be scared to put your money into something, to build it and let it flourish. There's no reason why in the city of Houston, the number of Muslims that are here, there shouldn't be in the next 10, 20 years, multiple shelters of all different kinds, that there shouldn't be an absence of services that train you to understand definitively how do you start to notice and respond and support individuals who are in situations of abuse. Literally, there's a verse in the Quran that says the girl who is killed is going to question for what crime she had committed. May Allah protect us. It's not a joke. You can't play games. You don't want to pretend like you are something that you're not. But then there are people who can actually fill those roles. Staff your centers with them, but it's not simply as why is somebody not there. They're not there because the money has to be there. The finances have to be there. I run numerous nonprofits and sit on boards of them. I serve a student-based community. Last Ramadan, my student-based community raised almost $2 million in charitable funds for people in need. They're students and young people. They have ethics and values that they rally around to mobilize people on a mass level. It took us a week and a half. It thought it would take us a year to raise $700,000 to purchase and renovate what's an emergency confidential shelter for women and children who are survivors of abuse. In a week and a half, from over 9,000 unique donors, we raised $1 million. People want to get behind ideas. They want to get behind things. You just got to be able to empower the right people and have them feel as if everything doesn't have to go through existing apparatus. This room has the talent. It has the entrepreneurs, the people who understand finance, accounting, bookkeeping, graphic design, law, medicine, social work, mental health. You bring everybody together and off of data, not what you feel, not what you think, but off of something that's based substantively. Do needs assessment. Recognize and go to the universities that have experts and learn and understand about the demographic that is the beneficiary you're trying to serve. And then you build something with real vision and strategy so that it has ihsan as part of what you're putting into it, and it lasts forever, not just for moments. Because there's never going to be a shortage of men who have no idea what it means to be a man. But for people who want to understand that ours is a deen that's not simply about not doing wrong, we're supposed to also do right. And we do it because we have the ability to do it. So you have the knowledge, the skills, the credentials. You just got to start to sit down now with the people sitting around you and say, how do we build what we have the capacity to build? And if a tragedy is a catalyst for that, then you don't let these people's lives be something that was taken in vain. If somebody wants to sit and bicker, you've learned somebody who you shouldn't be working with, move on to find the person that you can. You sit down and you think with strategy and build teams. You say, what is Houston lacking right now? There's a lot of places you can eat food. You don't need more halal food restaurants. There's a ton of masjids. I ask different people, do you come here? No, we go to a masjid that's 20 minutes from here, and where we are, there's also 2 other masjids down the street in Musalla. It's not a good or a bad, it's a thing. That's amazing. You don't need more masjids. Now you start to think what you're building upon that was already built. Why did God give you the degrees and credentials that he gave to you? Look at how sick some parts of this country are. Why is there so much Islam flourishing here? Why has Islam existed since the inception of the country? What did God bring us here to do, if not to be a means of healing, a mercy, a source of benefit? That's what the Quran says, right? It calls itself a shifa. It calls itself a rahmah. Be like the Quran. Somebody is saying something, just absorb it. Let it kind of take place. You practice the hilm of the Prophet ﷺ, the forbearance. You be the calming source in the room by validating emotions and saying, I know it must be hard for you. I'll give you an example anecdotally what I mean. I'm sorry I'm talking a lot. A woman in my community had a miscarriage. Well, I'll make it easy for her. She called me and she said, we're going to bury the fetus. Can you come and make dua with my family and I? And I've known her and her husband for some time, good friends of mine. I said, of course. I drove down to where they were. We buried the fetus. We made some dua together. And I said to the family members, the immediate family members, that why don't you all go wait in the cars and we'll let the mother and father just have some time. And I said to the husband, who's a friend of mine, like, hey man, I know you're not feeling so good right now, but your wife really needs you. And then I left them sitting, holding hands side by side, silence, as they're just reflecting on the passing of their child. When I got to the parking lot, her father was very not feeling so well, came to me, and he said, it's time to go. You need to go tell her that we have to leave. She needs to move on, and she shouldn't even be here anyway, because women aren't supposed to go to cemeteries. And as he's letting it all out, I turned to him, and I put my hand on his shoulder. I said, Uncle, I'm so sorry about everything that you've lost in the last couple of days. And I know that you really want to help your daughter feel good, and you don't know how to do that. But tell me, do you really think the solution is for me to go to her and tell her that Allah is upset with her? She's just sitting there. She's not doing anything. You said, no, that's not what I meant at all.
He said, you don't have to do anything. Just be her father. When she's feeling down, just support her the way a father can. That even though she's not a little girl anymore, she's much older. You putting an arm around her, letting her know it's going to be okay, it's going to make a difference. The idea is not to let him learn how to empathize with her. He needs empathy too. And if the immediate reaction in hearing his response is like, what an idiot, why is he talking like that? Then you don't get anything of what we're talking about tonight. Somebody has to be able to also navigate individuals who they have no place of self-expression, and not knowing how to say what they're saying is going to come out in like a verbal diarrhea that you're like, what are you talking about? But then on the receiving end, you take it in and you help to recenter individuals so that we're not just coming to pray as bodies, but our hearts are also prostrated. That we're in a place where we have a connection that transcends differences that are externals, and we're really rooted in a commonality of La ilaha illallah, and I can still be in a place that despite some of the foolishness that comes out of your mouth, I still love you. And I know that you're hurting right now. And you might say something that sounds so ridiculous, but me adding to it by putting you down, it then stopped being altogether about the people whose lives we lost. And we forget what it was that brought us there in the first place. Do you get what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So somebody at some point just has to exert compassion. And they have to be in a place where they're willing to let people listen. They got to step up sometimes and tell the people who are now overwhelming the conversations with all kinds of foolishness to just shut their mouth and sit down. But it can all still be done with kindness. It can all still be done with compassion. It doesn't have to be done in stoking the own ego. And it can be something that is going to still in the long term help everyone to heal and to move forward as best as they can with a remembrance of the ones that we lost so that we continue to build for them what we can. You know, does that make sense? I know the sister here wanted to say something. Yeah.
Just to address the initial prompt about, how I'm feeling right now. Initially, I was saddened by the news, as was most people. And then yesterday, with the tragedy that occurred yesterday, I felt an overwhelming sense of heaviness. And actually, on our way here, the news is playing in the background as we're getting ready to go. And I had to, hurry up and just find a remote, turn it off, because the details that were coming out was just, overwhelming. So I feel a sense of heaviness, and I know that you have to be careful, because that heaviness can turn into a ton of emotions. One being depression, and then I feel a sense of frustration. I feel a sense of frustration, with myself and with the community. We have the tendency of whenever there's something tragic that happens, we're hot and heavy all over it. And then after a couple weeks, things simmer down and we go back to our regular, work routine, come pray at the masjid five times a day, family nights at the masjid, and then whatever the present issue is, it's no longer being addressed. It's happened time and time again, whenever, racial issues occur, domestic violence issues occur, the matters die down. And I would like to see that we do maybe quarterly, something where we're doing an emotional mental health check-in with each other, something like this, or maybe I don't know what the dynamics, how they could be, but I feel like we need to do something on a regular basis. I was telling my husband that, you know, you guys at the masjid in the mornings or on the weekends, instead of just talking about business, check in with each other. Because oftentimes it's the brothers who feel like they have to be strong and supportive and, you know, the providers and protectors, and they really aren't vulnerable with themselves or their family or each other, where they can kind of lean in on each other and get the support that they need. So I would like to see, you know, brothers checking in with each other on a regular basis. There's a resource that's, I guess it was birthed through COVID. And there's a Zoom class, and I think the brothers are out in New York. Not a Zoom class, but a Zoom meeting where once a month the brothers, you know, they get on a Zoom meeting, and they just basically they talk about stuff. And I've been meaning to let my boys know about it, but I forget, because, you know, our young men will essentially become leaders in the community as well, and I want them to have a healthy understanding and relationship with emotional and mental health. I feel like, you know, the community overall, we know that there's a stigma there. We know that people don't allow ourselves to receive help when we need it. We know that the stigmas that go along with it, oftentimes people, you know, they shy away from help or just even conversations about it. So I would just like to see us supporting each other a little bit more and not feeling like we have to hold our guard up. Another example, and I'm gonna wrap it up. You know, my husband's from West Africa. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. So he shares with me some of the traditions that they have. One of the traditions that they have is there's somebody appointed to a couple once you get married to kind of be your counselor, your in-house therapist, if you will. I don't know if any other community has that. And I feel like, you know, when people come over here, those type of traditions, they're lost because we're so busy on the day-to-day grind to acquire the American dream. So we lose those traditions, and we lose the ability to communicate with each other and talk to each other and let each other know, hey, everything isn't going okay. I would like to see those type of traditions come back. I would like for us to feel comfortable with sharing with one another, regardless if, and this is just me, because I'm pretty much an open book in many instances, but regardless of worried about, you know, what somebody's going to say about you, what somebody's going to think about you, get away from that mentality, get away from that thinking. You know, if there's a sister that you know that's hurting, or a brother that you know that's hurting or dealing with something, you know, open up yourself to them and allow them to open up themselves to you. We have a lot of work. I personally am more than willing to participate and help with anything possible. And inshallah, this will be the first of many things. I just hope that this isn't something that, as with many things that happen in our community, you know, we're all over it and then it dies down and we don't hear anything else about it. So, and I highly encourage the brothers in my household and our close friends as well to lean in on each other and just allow yourself to be vulnerable and feel all the feels and, you know, have talks and, you know, support each other.
Inshallah, thank you for that. I just wanted to piggyback on that and add that in order for what the sister is saying to create that environment, it's really important to have that safe space where we feel that others will respect that confidentiality and not judge us and not, you know, kind of come from a place of judgment. I will tell you over the past week, since I've been, you know, working with the community and out here up north since the tragedy, I've had multiple people come out to me and say, I'm in a similar situation. My husband threatened me, you know, and said, if I leave him, he would kill me. My point is that there are a lot of folks that are struggling and are in vulnerable situations, and they don't feel that they can talk to anybody. And partly it's because they don't feel that their confidentiality would be respected out of that. And so I think it's important to make sure that you create a safe space and allow people to feel that, validated, and that what they're sharing is actually truthful. First of all, a lot of times we feel like, oh, this person's exaggerating. This person really, is having marital issues or whatever, mental health issues that they're not. It's really difficult for someone to come forward and say what's going on in their life and share their story. So I think it's important for us, in order to be vulnerable, we need to create that safe space so that others feel that they feel validated and they don't feel judged. So I just wanted to add that piece.
So just really quickly, I think as another exercise, because there's a lot more people in here now than right after Maghrib had started. I want you to take 2 minutes. You're going to turn to the person next to you. And all you're going to do is ask them, how are you really dealing with all of this? How's it making you feel? And then just listen to them for a few minutes. If you know the person sitting next to you very well, and you feel like you can't have this conversation with them for some reason, then just go find somebody else. And don't be offended if somebody moves to find someone else. Share your name with the person sitting next to you. And be in a place where you just listen here, right? So we want to do it in pairs, ideally. And then in a few minutes, we'll switch. Return to them. If you're sitting next to somebody who is younger than you, older than you, doesn't matter. Just listen. And allow for yourself to talk about what are some of the things we're taking away so far. And then in a few minutes, I'll let you know when to switch. If you just talk to the person sitting next to you for a bit, and then we'll switch it up. Go ahead. So all you're doing is asking them, how is it going for you? How are you feeling with everything that's happened in the last couple of weeks? And then we'll switch in a couple of minutes and then come back to debrief. So one person should be talking and the other person should be listening. If you're sitting and not doing either, then you're not participating. Force yourself to participate. That's part of the process. If you haven't already, we can maybe switch to the other person and then keep going. Okay, so we want to be able to do, just as Isha is coming in, I know the program is going along. Is there anybody who feels like there's things that they want to just add in, maybe something you heard from the person you were talking to that would be important for us to hear before we invite Sheikh Hamza and Dr. Saad to come up and make some closing remarks? Yeah, go ahead. You go for it. You can stand up. Yeah.
It's so male dominant that women usually end up having a suppressed voice just by their nature. Like the mother-in-law tells them to keep it quiet, or even the father of the daughter says, "Hey, everyone deals with this," or the mother says, "Hey, that's how the world is." So they have a voice through ISGH. Another thing I wanted to say was, for the future, to deal with tragedy, we could do a better job in PR. What I mean by that is that Buffalo was divisively covered, and so was the shooting that happened yesterday for the elementary was divisively exploded out of proportion just because the person's last name was Salvador, or it happened to be near the border. So it fits the agenda of Texas. So if a tragedy like this was to occur, there needs to be an ISDH plan or something that says, you know what, let's bring in the news team, let's bring in somebody, and let's not have this conference now, let's have it like the very day after, or also have the news team, and we can ISDH address it. It's not Sheikh Mamdouh, this is an ISDH masjid. This is a greater Houston population, we're talking 110 masajid under one umbrella, and it doesn't make sense for a person who's qualified to be teaching Quran, to teaching Hadith, giving every day-to-day lecture to handle a crisis situation when he himself is part of the crisis. When he himself has kids that are going to HBA that are directly affected by it. His reaction is fair. When he's talking about how his knees started to shake because he himself is personally dealt into the crisis. Kind of like in a doctor situation, you don't treat your own family members. And that's like conflict of interest. Same thing here. He has to deal with the issue by himself. But ISDH, being from far away, you handle that PR. If it means that news station have to come that night to the masjid, and there has to be a representation from the Islamic community, and we just have to gather, just for the sake of having a presence that we stand with women, that I feel like that was a lost opportunity. We didn't technically exploit that to the best of its ability. Because if we let it go in the back turn, they're like, oh, Muslims, you know how they are with their women, they have to wear a hijab. We could really put our voice out there and explain, no, Islam does not condone this, right? And for the brothers, we have to change from our culture to real Islam. What I mean by that is, that culture that I just described needs to be got rid of. I remember listening to a lecture about the love between Aisha and Prophet ﷺ, and how on his wedding night he turned the glass from where the Aisha drank, he drank from the same side. And the brothers were giggling. They're laughing. But in reality, you're laughing at the Prophet. You're laughing at the Sunnah. It's because we're so infused with our culture, we refuse to see, just by saying, hey, the food's okay. That's compliment enough. So I just want to say things that have not been said. That's all I have.
Exactly. Okay. We had a question that we're going to have answered. Just to kind of give a quick response to it, there's thousands of people in the world who have ideas every day. There's dozens of people who execute on their ideas. And this is why in the beginning, when we were setting guidelines for the space, I said make I statements and not we statements. I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. I think it's very valid. But it's not going to lead to any executable items, because who's going to step up and do those things? And I can tell you, for me on my end, and where I'm at in my life, and why I do some of the things that I do, I'm just trying to build as much as I can while I have a chance to do so. And I'm looking for people to build with. I don't believe God gave me a platform to be self-serving. So when you can transition that statement from a we to an I, and you can start to figure out how do you build with ihsan. I'm not familiar with all of the apparatus that exists in Houston or Texas as a state, but with fundamental principles and building blocks, you can create institutions. So 3 people have said there should be a hotline. The Nasiha hotline that's in Toronto has, I know because I've spoken to them, they want to open different things in the state, in the United States. Most of the people that call them are from the United States. So it already exists as a resource. They do peer-to-peer counseling. And why I want to break this down is because quite often when we're trying to create, but we're not familiar with what the landscape is, we start to now not recognize that there's certain things that certain institutions, that's just not what they do. A domestic violence shelter doesn't necessarily provide legal advocacy. It might not necessarily provide financial empowerment programs. They're not all things to all people. If I go to see an orthopedic surgeon, they're not going to necessarily be somebody who knows how to perform surgery on my brain, right? Different offices perform different services. Recognizing how it all fits together necessitates that interdisciplinary mode of engagement, and then you sit down and you fill the bucket that makes sense for you. The team that's building our DV agency has on it individuals who understand law. They've worked in domestic violence. We have architects that are building out the actual physical structures. People who understand finance. They understand social media, digital media marketing. These are not my skill sets. When they came to me, I said, great, let's do it. This is where I can help you. When you build a nonprofit, you need to have a sensible vision. What are you doing? So you understand what you're not doing. A mission statement that helps to actualize that, and a financial model, a revenue model that creates a stability for the longevity of the project. Those are 3 bases. When you recognize your weaknesses, you then pay for your weaknesses. So you build a team that doesn't put the burdens only on one social worker to suddenly deal with all the Muslims in Houston, one sheikh to deal with all of the challenges, and then also take the criticisms and complaints while they're still trying to deal with their own family and everything else that's going on.
but you have to fit the individual, yourself, into it. You start to make I statements, and you start to then see, with strategy and patience, how do you build something? You don't want to replicate things. There's a national domestic violence phone number that people can call from anywhere in the country. You do landscaping and inventory. This is why it's data-driven. You're going to put millions of dollars into something that might exist down the street. And you're just not leveraging it because you don't know it exists. Do you get what I mean? I'm happy to help anybody. We've done consultation for cities across the country that know we've built a DV agency, and we're looking to build it to a $8 to $10 million a year nonprofit. Because that's what it takes to cover all of the services necessary across the board. And cities from around the country have said, how do we build this where we are? We go and we help them build it. Non-Muslims have reached out, saying, we want to do this in our communities. The Sikh community has reached out. Same cultural stigmas. What do? We're going to go and we're going to help them. We're going to get it done. And we just get the right people involved. So the statements that say, we need to do this, we need to do that, yeah, who's going to do it? Why are you not doing it? Why aren't you doing it with real strategy, with a real sense of vision? And you have to understand that you have the ability to do it. You have the capacity to do it. You just have to overcome whatever is inside and recognize that it can't be now someone else only. You take your skills, intention enough is not going to do it. And then you rely, because you don't want the other alternative to be somebody who's passionate, but they don't know what they're doing. And then they build things that are not institutionally sound, and it creates liabilities that pop up when you don't want them to pop up. So you have in this room right now immense talent. If we went and asked every single person, what do you have in terms of training, degrees, what is even what you have in terms of financial resources, what do you have in terms of networks? This room alone, not the community, not everybody who comes to pray, Jummah, whatever else, just in this room alone, you definitely have what you need to build a robust agency that creates educational awareness, training, advocacy, mediation, counseling, residential services for survivors of abuse. Somebody just has to tell you, you got to believe in yourself. And it's okay to do it differently from other places. That it doesn't have to only be messages that we built. It doesn't have to be only schools that we built. They're valuable, you've built it. Now you think about what you build next, and you bring yourself into the equation. Otherwise, it's just going to be conversation, and then there's not going to be movement on it. Don't be amongst the thousands who have an idea, and then they don't execute on it. You take a chance, and you sit down with people who know what they're doing, and you learn from them. There's no shortage of agencies that provide so many social services in this state, in this city, and around the country. You learn their best practices. You put some of your money in to bring in consultants in to help you build the foundation. So you don't start from scratch. And what you invest is going to help in the long term. So then you create other opportunities for people to be socialized, and then they don't have to base their opinion simply on what they think, but it's rooted in something that actually understands the demographic that you're seeking to serve. Do you get what I mean? I know we had a question that the Sheikh was going to respond to, and then we're going to have,
Allah, the question is about the stigma of if I talk to someone, then my case would be the talk of the town. How do you deal with that? Well, this is not a stigma, it is a fact. It's going to happen if you talk to the wrong person. And also, if you do not listen actively and you do not feel the amana, responsibility of keeping someone's, serious complaint and work with it, then it's a problem. And this is the problem. It's twofold. One, you pick whom you talk to. You do not just talk to anybody. Even a close friend, you do not just tell them everything. Sometimes you have to talk to a professional. What you tell the sheikh is different from what you tell the counselor. It's different from what you tell the therapist. You have to learn whom to pick. That's why Allah says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ أهل الذكر, and the people of special. They are special. They know they're going to benefit you. So do not just go to someone just to talk to, and then you're risking that everybody. Oh, do you hear what happens? And then the next day, all Houston is talking about you. Right? So this is number one. Number two, when somebody talks to you, so one of two things: it's either you are able to help them by even listening only, or you're not able to help. Oh, I don't have the capacity to take their problems, but I know who does. And it ends right there. Or you keep it as amana. It's an amana. It's an amana. When somebody tells you their secret or tell you something like that, it is an amana. It's a trust. If you go talk to somebody else, you're betraying them. Unless there is something like dangerous or something, you have to call the authority or you have to talk to someone. But people come and talk about different things. And I'm telling you, like, the amount of things come to me as a sheikh is like sometimes disturbing to some of you. So like, but I have to deal with it. And I cannot just go talk to my wife or talk to my children or talk to even another sheikh and tell them, you know what, somebody came crazy yesterday, told me, I don't even say without names. But I categorize it, and then if I wanted to talk to a professional, tell them, what would you do in cases such and such and such? I'm not going to tell you there is someone, because they will start making conclusions. Oh, maybe that someone is the one who was walking to the sheikh's office last night. People do these things, Oh, maybe sheikh means such and such person. We do those things. So even that I would not share with others. I was just saying, what would you do with issues of teenagers who are doing such and such? What would you do with wives who are such and such? So two things I mentioned. You have to get over that. Pick whom you talk to. It's not about trustworthiness only. It's about being trustworthy and being professional. Even the people ask, whom should I ask for fatwa? Said the person who is a knowledgeable scholar and have taqwa. Not only knowledgeable, can give you the answer, but they fear Allah Azza wa Jalla. You see, what they say is what they do. Those are someone that you can trust. And someone who have the knowledge. Someone you can trust, but they don't have the knowledge. They don't benefit you. Somebody who have the knowledge, but you cannot trust. They don't benefit you. So same thing. When you go to somebody trustworthy, and they know what they're doing. And when somebody talks to you, it is an amana. If you cannot carry it, don't listen. But if you can carry it, alhamdulillah. If you can't, then point them to someone else. Allah A'lam. This is my take on it.
Real quick, I just wanted to add that I know there's been some great ideas with hotlines and organizations. I just want to tell you that there are existing organizations within the community and that you all can support. First of all, I brought a bunch of flyers for DAYA, which is a domestic violence agency affiliated with, as I said, that supports survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. I'm leaving some flyers here. In the past, we have a hotline, and it's Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5:30. We're not a 24-hour hotline, but we will attend to emergencies and get back to you as soon as possible. We are in the process of trying to hold trainings in different masajids over on town, trying to just jump on, again, trying to make this a catalyst for positive change and just go around to mosques and also communities to just give the training for domestic violence. In addition to that, I mentioned Olive Branch Muslim Family Services, modeled after Jewish Family Services, Catholic Charities. We provide a culturally sensitive lens that we were talking about. I think that a physician mentioned earlier that you want to talk to somebody that might kind of know where you're coming from in that regard. So we offer social services, including financial assistance, case management, mental health counseling. So we would love for you all to support those organizations. I'm also leaving flyers for Olive Branch with you all. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's getting late, inshallah. We'll start Isha soon and then we'll have dinner afterwards. So please make sure you get your food before you leave. But first and foremost, on behalf of the Shura for Plan Islamic Center and also BHA-Houston, I would like to humbly thank all the speakers, Sheikh Mamdouh, Sheikh Khalid, as well as Sister Fatima for being here on a pinch, really. This was a last minute organized event based on the need of the community. We're all one ummah, so it doesn't matter where it was held, we're all part of the same body. And if one part of the body hurts, then we all should feel the pain. And this is part of the healing that we wanted to have, the outpouring of your emotions that really matters, and that really starts the healing process. But and also, having said that, we will have continuing meetings like this in the future. We'll coordinate with the shuyukhs and the leaders and the experts in the community, not just on this topic, but also with youth, and all the problems that the society is facing. And as one of the brothers asked me on the way to the masjid, what is the vision or what is the mission of this place? Of course, one of them is here, but it's basically to solve any current issues of the community and be the leader in it and get the experts involved and try to solve all the problems the right way. Of course, this is a major topic and major issue, and just I want to pour my heart out too, because I was also touched when I was there and I was at the leaving the cemetery, and I had 5 youngsters with me in the car, and on the way back I always piqued their brains and I asked them, what did you learn? Anything new you learned going to the cemetery today? And each one of them had interesting comments, and I told them mine. The first time I saw a grave, one grave with 3 bodies, 3 generations going into it. And inshallah, we pray to Allah that this will never happen again. Inshallah, Ameen. So this was my touching moment for that, and a 4-year-old, which also happens to be my 4-year-old daughter, and so that was really heartwarming, heartfelt to me. So this is one way in terms of I challenge myself, all of you, and also the different community members, as well as the groups that we have, such as Olive Branch and others, ISGH. We will come together. We need to unite for the sake of the ummah, because we're one ummah, and we need to think about ideas. A lot of good ideas came forth today. We need to see, inshallah, in the next meeting, we'll have some solution for our community here and see what we can do to better our community as a whole, and reach out to people that we need. Sister also gave out the information about the daya. We have some cards outside. You can take some. There's a hotline there. Also, Olive Branch, her other cards as well. And so we do have some systems in place, but how can we optimize those? And inshallah, we'll definitely, as leaders, is a challenge. As a community, is a challenge. And inshallah, we'll all together, we can hopefully help each other the best way possible. Jazakumullah for coming, inshallah, and we'll let you know the next event when that's planned. Hopefully it'll be on a weekend, and we'll have enough notice for everybody, inshallah, and that way we can all participate in the best way possible. But Jazakumullah khair, especially Sheikh Khalid, mashallah, one phone call and that was it, and mashallah, you're here. We really appreciate it. Sheikh Mamdouh and Sister Fatima, Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We will go ahead and pray Isha, and the food will be outside. It's sandwiches, so it's dry. You can take it home if you don't have. I know it's getting late, so there's enough food for everybody. So on your way out, please get your food.
Inshallah, we're going to have a program, inshallah, also Friday, Fajr Salam, inshallah.